This episode is brought to you by the European Co-working Assembly. We are everything Co-working Europe. If you head to the Co-working Assembly website, you can connect with our World Co-working, European Freelancers Week, Co-working Symposium, Co-working Library, and Co-working Tools.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Co-working Values podcast. I would encourage you to spin back to last week and listen to my colleague, my friend Jose's episode with Vika. Vika runs the Ukraine Co-working Assembly, and he did an epic podcast with her about how the last few months have been. I'm recording this. I have to say, I'm recording this from a very luxurious phone booth in Impact Brixton, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the Cobot blog that Lord Mark Navarro did with Gerald, the founder here. It's an amazing little space above Brixton Market. So if you're ever in town, come and say hello. And then on the line today, I have John Seal, who I'm going to say, John, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for, sir?
Oh, well, there's a question, eh? So I'm John Seal. I'm the MD of Technology Within. Technology Within looks after the networking and software for a lot of flexible workspaces in the UK. Nearly 400 locations support our platform, and we help everyone get online, which is pretty important these days. Even recording a podcast, you need basic internet connectivity. So
we do uninterrupted connectivity. I want to dive straight into I'd like to do like a really elegant build up here, but I just want to slam right into the education thing, because that is such a in the whole of our co-working universe, one of the things that keeps coming up in the co-working idea project about inclusion and diversity and how people get jobs and find their way into their career. And the Urban MBA thing, the main reason you hear us folks talking a lot about Urban MBA, the main reason we connected with Urban MBA, which is a London-based program for people to forge their careers, start their products, start their service or musical career or create a career, is for those people to build their network. And that's why we got in it first. But it just, so many people love that program. And John, what do you want to say about that? Because I know you have something to say about that, but I can't lead into it more elegantly than that, because it's a great story.
Yeah, funnily enough, I've heard about the Urban MBA quite a few times recently. Most recently, I was at the New Flex location 22 Bishopsgate. New Flex being one of a big customer of ours, but they also host the Urban MBA candidates, I believe, on Fridays every week, and again, just give them some space, support them, and work through. And any kind of, I almost want to call it alternative education, but that's kind of wrong in itself. But there's definitely a mindset, and I think it's more with kind of people my age, around sort of 40-year-old bracket, where there's a sort of expectation of traditional education. So, you either went to university or you didn't. You were either educated in a good school or you weren't. And that quite often kind of leads on to kind of an expectation. And for me, I'm a massive fan of any kind of education that actually works for the personality that you are, and I'm not diminishing university education at all. It's absolutely brilliant. I've got 2 children. There's one of my daughters, without a doubt, is going to be university educated. It's how she absorbs information. And that's going to be definitely the way that she'll learn best. And then there's another child that's very similar to me. She's much more of a practical learner. And I think this is so important, that actually people don't look at education in, I've got to go through these steps. These are the things I have to do. What you need to do is look at the way that you're educated best. How do you learn best? How does your brain absorb that information? And so for me, I was a practical learner, so it was hugely obvious that an apprenticeship would be the best route for me. So I started out as an apprentice, and that's relatively unusual, I think. And I think there's definitely a mindset, and there was at the time, that apprenticeships were more for the trades. it's more for someone who wants to be an electrician, a plumber, a bricklayer, anything like that. And I think there's been a huge shift, and I think the young now as well, kind of, social media's got a lot to do with it, is that they are not so committed to that traditional mindset. So I think really the message more now for me is kind of people have got to people of our age who are now in sort of more senior positions have got to kind of understand that education is very, very different. If you look through a CV and you filter just for a university degree, and that's put as part of your hiring profile, you're going to miss out on some pretty damn good people. And I think there's multiple ways. And I think there's also a huge thing of more and more people need to support the apprenticeship scheme as well. I think
what was your first thing, John? What was your first, can you remember back to your first few weeks, and say a little bit about the journey from hello, I'm John, I'm doing an apprenticeship, to, hello, I'm John, Managing Director of Technology Within. How you doing? Because that's and sorry to ask another question after another question that you haven't even answered yet, but when you were doing that apprenticeship, were you I just got to get a job, or did you even know how to? Because I didn't know that age. Did you know how to have vision and goals and stuff like that?
No, and I think that's something that I learned really quickly. And look, the learning curve moving from being at school as a 16-year-old lad to going to a workplace, and I started. I was very keen to get into the work, so I didn't sort of take a summer break. I finished my GCSEs in July of '97, and then a couple of weeks later, I was at work, and I've sort of been in full-time work ever since. But I love that. I love the fact that every day is a learning day. And I think, of course, the curve of learning was probably much, much steeper for me when I was that, spotty 16-year-old lad that had just gone to work. But actually, I think as soon as you get to the point in your job where you're not learning something new every day, I get pretty bored. And actually, that's usually the thing that it's time to move on. It's time to find a new challenge, or to do something else, or to push yourself further as soon as you're not learning something. So it's quite a journey between the two, but actually there's a running theme there of just empowering yourself more.
Do you end up, how many times do you end up at a sort of, I hate this word, but C-suite convention, and there's lots of, I went to university versus, is there like a sort of feeling in the room, or does no one really mind? That's a really odd question, but I wonder how you feel when you walk into a room. Do you as the apprentice polytechnic person versus the I went to a university?
To be honest with you, I've never felt that. I think the reality is that when you get in and you've had enough work experience under your belt, actually your education status almost diminishes. I think there are still some large employers that have it as a tick box to a certain level, that you have to be degree educated, and I think that's a huge issue. And I think again, they're missing out on good people, but that's fine. There's more good people available for the rest of us for having a bit of a broader view there. But no, I don't think there is. And if there is, I've never perhaps acknowledged it or almost been in tune to it, because I just see it as irrelevant.
I think it's about an inner confidence, and it's a we're going to go for the self-development podcast here, not a co-working podcast, but there's like a I think you said it before we came on, the appreciation of entrepreneurial spirit, or making, what we call, my favorite thing at the moment is to shout out the words creator economy, and that is making things. And Gerald here at Impact Brixton talks about, making your thing and putting it out into the world and recognizing your value. And at a sort of slightly deeper level, the people in your company and companies like yours, you are making things and putting stuff out into the world that are of value, which is a little bit more, I don't know, it's a bit more honourable than I'm just turning up to do a job or something. I don't want to be sort of fumbled what I was saying there, but like taking pride in your work, I suppose, is a way of saying it, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely some irony for me is that I think as an MD, I make a lot less now. Obviously as a business, we do a lot, and we put things out, and I'm a part of that. But ultimately, your position as an MD is actually to work with all of the senior exec team that are ultimately doing the fun stuff. So our technical director that's kind of really looking at how everything plumbs together, how it all works, and then for us to kind of look at where that fits in from finance and everything else. That's probably more my position. So I've had a few conversations with people every now and again. It's quite nice to get my hands dirty every now and again. I'll turn up at an install and help. We've got one booked in the end of July. I'm going to go over to Belfast and get a bit more involved. Go back to my apprenticeship roots, but that's great as well. And then all of a sudden, it's like that. What's the TV show Undercover Boss? I mean,
I was thinking of that as you were saying it.
Yeah, it's not quite as dramatic as that. There's no fake moustaches going on, but just going there and just seeing what's happening on the floor, what the guys, our project managers, what our install engineers are experiencing, it really helps you to kind of get a bit of a better understanding. And I don't think I'll ever move away from that. But I've wrapped it on so much. I've almost forgotten where we were with the.
It's the value of, because I always say, like, I went to university later and I wanted to be a teacher, and I learned so much about particularly the English education system and the bureaucracy, and how it just seemed thankless. My mother was a teacher, my sister's a secondary school teacher, and I just look at my sister and like she loves it, but I can't do that, And then when Urban MBA came along, I found that is probably loads of stuff I learned about in the education part of my degree. It just gets applied there, and all the we have a lot of conversations. Do you know David from Nook Pods?
Nook Pod rings a bell, but I don't think I know David. No.
So he's got a podcast with us. We're just always talking about neurodiversity and dyslexia and ADHD and different learning patterns, and people having their environments. And this is like their work environment and their learning environment built for them. And I would have just thrived at that. So much of it, I had amazing. I know everyone seems to say this, but I got through university because of the commitment of the tutors and professors around me, and I'm still friends with them today. And it was about like you said earlier, about a passion for what they were doing, and that engaged me. And now that spills over into a lot of things I do in my life all over it. But I really struggled. I found out I was dyslexic at university, and before that, my whole education thing was like a massive, massive struggle. And no one was ever cruel to me. I haven't got any stories like that. And I came from a nice family, but actually working out how to learn, I didn't do that until like the second year of university. And it was like grim. After that, I felt like I unlocked something.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because people just learn in different ways, and I think dyslexia is a great example of that. Is that there has been a while where the sort of the term dyslexia was almost an excuse for struggling and not being that bright, and then there's an awful lot of people that are dyslexic and hugely bright, hugely intelligent, have got so much to offer, but have struggled to put it down in different ways. And I think again, one of the things where the reasons why I have a passion for technology is that technology provides so many tools to make things so much easier for people with dyslexia. So little things like on WhatsApp, you haven't actually got to type. You can send voice notes. You can actually speak into your phone and it will type it out for you. So it means that you can have a much more eloquent message that's sent out because that phone's able to just take those words. You haven't got to put them physically down onto the piece of paper, the digital device. So technology has always been a huge step forward. And I think that's part of the reason why I had that kind of passion for tech.
Yeah, I've been using an app called VoiceStream on iOS for years, and if you send me an ebook in like seconds, it will turn it into audio. It's like a text to speech app. that completely changed my life. I've been listening to audio books. I didn't read a book for like years, and then when Audible came along, I can listen really fast and take it in, and I go back and read books like 3 times. So that, and then the other one, Grammarly, I write so fast and so much nowadays. And if those things had been around, 15 years ago when I was at uni, it would have been. It's been very enjoyable. That's why I'm so engaged with any type of technology, because it is. And I'm sure someone like you needs to hear this. It's like, it's life changing, John. It is. It's like transformational.
Without a doubt, and I kind of think back to one computer in the classroom when I was started, in primary school. You had one PC and the ability to use that, made a huge difference to a lot of people. So I think the embracing of technology, but technology is really important. You can overcomplicate things with technology, and one of the things we're really passionate about, and I'm really passionate about, is actually using technology to improve your experience. We've all been in those situations where actually technology just makes it more stressful, more painful, more challenging. So it's actually about kind of how can we make sure that tech is almost seamless, that you don't really notice, you don't really think about it. And I always think a great Wi-Fi experience is when you don't really think about it. I'm online, I'm doing my work. So if you haven't had to think about Wi-Fi, the provision is good. The minute that you've had to kind of think about it and consider it, it's not helping to a certain degree.
So let's jump into the leveling up conversation, because that kind of, when I was talking to a SEAL yesterday, I've read several documents about leveling up, and I didn't realize it was about that. I thought it was about I thought it was about education actually, but like the way she explained it to me yesterday from a co-working, flexible workspace, how we're going to do stuff thing, is very much in line with. I'm not sure if it's part of the document, but it's part of the 15-minute city ideal, where we like London is very like everywhere's like this. France is very Paris centric. Portugal is very Lisbon centric, and in the UK here, folks, like everything is London, and it's London and the southeast, which is where John and I live. But kind of just like one of the best opportunities. I almost feel a bit weird saying this. One of the best opportunities of lockdown and COVID is it's just proved that you can work in other cities in the UK or your house in the countryside. And I might, a lot of us, our big vision is to like people to be, working near their home and being part of their local community as well as part of their work community. But I'm sure you got something to say about that, John Seal.
Yeah, look, I think leveling up is really important. I mean, actually, as a provider, technology within has always looked after whole spans. We have sites in Aberdeen all the way down to Plymouth. We're not hugely London centric as a supplier, so we've always kind of been involved in this sort of provincial element and feel the pain of getting connectivity into flexible workspaces that are a little bit more remote, and the incurred costs, the higher costs that do that, and of course you get this irony where there's a much higher cost to get connectivity into a more remote location that arguably won't fetch the same sort of numbers and levels that you would in a central city location. So, this divide of kind of trying to make these businesses work and make them function. And we all know that connectivity is the number one. It's a utility that's just as important as electricity and water now. You walk into a workspace, and if they don't have internet connectivity, you turn around and you walk straight back out again.
Yeah.
And the same is good for a decent quality connection. So look, I think there's a lot to do. I think there's a massive change needed in the industry mindset, and I sort of include the tech industry as well as I include the landlords in that as well. Unfortunately, it's a little bit above where technology within are, but internet service providers.
What's that mindset change that we like? If we weren't recording this, John, and you had to say like these people need to sort it out, like what do you think we need to change? I say we on purpose.
I think fundamentally the way that there is definitely a monopoly in the UK of the way that internet provision is provided. There is a very, it's almost two providers that have, own the cables that run to the building, and they're the ones that really hold this. And there's just a completely archaic way of connecting buildings that we have situations where there is physically a fibre in the comms room of a building that is there, and it's still 2 to 3 months before you can light that fibre, and it is just ridiculous. So unfortunately you're trying to really change a mammoth thing there. So it then falls on landlords, and I think we call on landlords to this as well. Is light the fibre in a building, make sure you've got internet connectivity there, and then when the tenants arrive, it's instant on for them. But actually reversing back from that, I think that's what you need to do today. But reversing back from that, I think the big providers in the UK need to just realise that these services need to be lit instantly. And, there's physical infrastructure there. It should not take 2 months of bureaucracy to get a fibre lit in a building where it's already there. It should take a couple of days. Just the whole system, the whole process is struggling. And I think let's hope part of levelling up is obviously putting in more and more infrastructure, but we actually need to look at kind of how this happens on a clerical basis as well, because where there is physical infrastructure in place, is still not fast enough. And there's some sort of scary statistics as well. And, like in 2020, only 10% of homes actually have fibre connections to them. We're all still running on our old copper, pretty slow connections back to our homes. And that's the case for a lot of commercial property as well. That,
What about something I'm starting to understand is like, what about 5G? Because I've learned a lot about 5G from Kofi and Urban MBA, and it's a conversation there. But is that a big part of your work at this moment of time, or is that something in the future?
I think 5G is pretty separate. I think there's always going to be a need for connectivity in physical buildings. I think that movement from your mobile data onto Wi-Fi and fixed connectivity, and there's some kind of pretty long-winded, boring reasons as well why. There's always still going to be a demand for Wi-Fi and fixed connectivity. There's a little bit of latency conversation there, but also, 5G, because of its speed, has a very small window of coverage. But also, I was at the Ed Sheeran concert at Wembley last Saturday. Great concert, but we're not talking about that. Ultimately, 5G coverage at Wembley, absolutely brilliant. 5 bars of coverage. You've got 90,000 people in a stadium all wanting to jump on Instagram and check their messages, etc., etc. The internet is awful, and it's about contention. So it's about
the 5G was awful. Did the 5G slow down?
5G will suffer in the same way. So it's capable of much faster speeds, but the contention is still an issue. If you get 90,000 people trying to connect to a single mast, yes, you've got a brilliant wireless connection between your device, but if you're still trying to share a very sort of small amount of bandwidth and data, so that's just the reality. I think 5G is going to help a lot, and I think the more and more it can be rolled out, the better. But there's got to be a view of where different technologies work best, and where there's a real. There is also a culture to move from data to Wi-Fi. I think everyone always tries to kind of prefer that fixed wired connection. And I think
I do actually. As you're thinking about it, it's like whenever I move in a building, even though I have unlimited internet access, I always just connect to the thing. And it's and for more than 5 years. In fact, I cannot remember when I didn't have unlimited data because in the UK it was like £10 difference, and you just go, just pay £10, and I'm not a teenager anymore, and I'm not on a Mercury 1-to-1 phone, so I'm just going to have unlimited data. But
exactly.
It was what about like the mindset of people? Because I'm kind of part of me is delighted people coming to, the spaces we use in London, people are in there, but it's obviously quieter. And my hope, I think I'm going to frame this question like this. My hope was that more co-working spaces would have opened in, where you live in Kent. That it's definitely happening, but I hoped it would happen faster. And is that because we're just in this, we've accidentally gone back to getting on a train to go into town, or is it people don't understand what flexible working and co-working and everything is, or what needs to be done there?
I've kind of got a different view on this. I think the industry is absolutely booming at the moment. I mean, what we see as a provider to the industry is kind of that quotation of like, I'm opening a new centre, I'm doing this is coming up, and we are just seeing ridiculous volumes of inquiries of kind of new sites opening. And let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, look, we all want to put COVID behind us, but those 2 years were pretty horrific for the industry. And I think if you were an investor, you definitely would have been kind of sitting on your hands, even if you were like, yeah, this is definitely the answer. You'd be sitting on your hands to the point where things were starting to get ready. And we were only, we were still in a lockdown in January of this year. So I think there is a little bit of a delay, but if anything, if what we're seeing as a business at the moment is anything to go by, there is this boom is coming. And the centre inquiries that we get, the locations that we're looking at are not London centric. They're not Manchester centric. They are all over the UK, loads of different locations. And I think the message has gone out there. So, look, anybody that's been working, any of the operators that have been there for the last 2 years have felt that pain. But what it's done is just really kind of promoted this understanding of what flex workspace can offer, and I think it's also helped. I'm not an expert in this, but I know it was quite difficult to kind of get funding for a lot of flexible workspaces pre-COVID. Kind of justifying the model. There was very few. Giles Fuchs is a massive advocate of this. It talks about it a lot of kind of how you kind of prove that your space is valuable and worthwhile. That's actually helped. I think a lot more investors and people that are prepared to put capital into promoting space are now prepared to look at it. So this sort of change in work has been hugely painful for the last 2 years, but I think we've definitely, this is almost the golden time, I feel, for flex workspace post COVID. Yeah,
I do too. Do you think they're going to open a new company called Office Space in Village or Office Space in Office Space? I can't do that. But yeah, that's what I'm glad you said that, because I haven't. I read a lot about it, but it's so easy to like read, and then every so often you'll have a conversation with someone who's actually like getting phone calls about what's happening. I was in an event in with. What are they called? It was a tech real estate event at 22 Bishopsgate, and they said there was a whole comment. There was Rob from Spaceworks, Space Maid, I think it is, and he's saying this is just it's amazing and distressing how many buildings. Juliette Morgan was there, did a really good talk about how buildings need to be more sustainable when they're built, not just built to pretend to be sustainable. And there was, it's just like there's so much office space. I was going to say office space in town that's like, very, very low occupancy. And it is all a bit weird, that it's okay to be like that. And the City of London's just said, you are only allowed to build a building, if you can tell us why we really need this building built, which I'm not a real estate expert, but I think that's a little bit too late. But it's great they're doing that. And I would love to see people, working nearer home. Is there anything I could have asked you, John, that I should have asked you? Because I've got loads of notes here, and that was a very interesting conversation. But is there anything you're dying to convey to the world before we hang up?
No, I think we've covered a few sort of good points there, and look, it's a privilege to be able to chat with you and kind of chat through some things that are pretty close to my heart. So education and the right forms of education. As a business, we've just closed applications for our new round of apprentices, which has been on hold over the COVID period. But look, Bernie, it's been really great to chat, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Can you shout out where we can find you? We'll put links in the show notes, but for those running through the park as they listen to this, where can we find you and your company online?
So technologywithin.com, and then on most of the social channels, LinkedIn, you can easily find me or any of the people at the business. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks so much, John. And thanks for your time and attention today, ladies and gentlemen. If you go to coworkingassembly.eu, hang around for a few minutes, and one of those highly effective but incredibly annoying pop-ups will come on. Get on our email list, and we'll email you news about this week in co-working, and Hector's brilliant newsletter. There's also the events we're doing, the ongoing co-working idea project, which is about inclusion, diversity, equality, and accessibility. Later in the year, we have a handbook for co-working spaces. So if you haven't got the capacity to employ a full-time diversity and inclusion person, that handbook will help you through that. And just be careful out there. It is a jungle. Have a great weekend. Bye.